I'm Alec Baldwin, and you're listening to Marketing Trends and the Leads Aren't Weak.
How much content has your company generated? And where does it all live? Could you find it if you wanted to? Well, you could if you were using Algolia's products. Having a powerful search engine is critical to bringing to light content that will help build your company's brand and credibility. Ashley Stirrup knows this, and as the CMO of Algolia, he's helping to make sure that other companies know it too. He talks about the power of search, the importance of building credibility, and so much more on this episode of Marketing Trends. Enjoy the conversation. Marketing Trends Podcast is brought to you by Salesforce. We bring marketing and engagement together. Learn more at salesforce.com/marketing.
Here is your host, Ian Faison.
Welcome to Marketing Trends. I'm Ian Faison, host of Marketing Trends. We are joined by special guest, Ashley. What's going on?
Hi, happy to be here.
We are happy to have you. So I have been excited to talk to you and also talk Algolia. It's a fun company. It's a hot company, and you all are doing some amazing work. So we'll get into all of that. But first, how did you get started in marketing in the first place?
Yeah, I started at Siebel Systems. I joined them when they were a $25 million company. And over the next 5 years, they grew to $2 billion. So it was a fabulous place to get my first experience and learn from some really great people.
Yeah. And so, we were talking earlier about the idea that getting started in such a sales-oriented company might have been helpful for a marketing leader. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, it was funny. I think Tom Siebel expected everybody in the company, including the janitor, to sell. And it just gives you this whole different perspective when whatever you're building, you're thinking about how is a salesperson going to articulate this to a customer? And I think it's just really helped me be better aligned with sales throughout my career.
Before we get into why or what you do as CMO of Algolia, share why'd you decide to join?
Yeah, well, before Algolia, I was CMO for Talend. I was there for 5 years, and we took that business from $50 million to today it's a $250 million business. We took it public a couple years later. And I was spending over $1 million a year on paid search, and I was spending over $1 million a year on creating great content, organic content to attract organic traffic. And I was spending basically nothing on search on my own site. And when I ran across Algolia and I saw just how much more accessible you could make content on your own site, I realized that I was missing something really important. And I saw just how much value Algolia could provide to any company.
Yeah, I remember the first time I heard about it, I remember Jason Lemkin talking about it over and over and over again. And I wonder how many people heard about it just from how much Jason would talk about how great Algolia was as a company, because he was such an outspoken evangelist and investor. I'm curious.
Yeah, no, he's been a terrific partner for us.
It's funny. You always hear about, kind of active versus passive investors. And obviously he has a huge following and all the SaaStr stuff, but I'm sure a lot of companies wish that they could kind of create some of that magic in terms of evangelism of their own. Is there anything that you do particularly? And we'll get into some of the Algolia stuff. So obviously, you all have been doing really, really well. For our listeners who don't know, just kind of share, what does Algolia do?
Yeah, I realized I should have done that. So we provide a search engine for websites. So companies like LVMH and Under Armour, Twitch, National Geographic, we power the search on their websites for all sorts of different websites. Today we have over 8,600 customers. And typically what we help companies do is focus on increasing conversion rates. So we often see people having a 30% increase in terms of conversion or likelihood to buy after implementing Algolia's search engine.
That's crazy. And so is it white label? Does anyone know that Algolia is on the site?
No, it's totally white labeled. So you'd never know if you went to the Under Armour site that it was powered by Algolia.
And you all have been named, a leader in a bunch of different ways. Can you share just some of that stuff so for our listeners?
Yeah. So we were named on the Inc. 5000 list. Last year, we just did our Series C and raised over 110 million from a number of folks, including Excel and Salesforce. Just seeing tremendous growth. So it's been a fun time.
And also, I think in G2's grid report, you're named like a leader or something like that as well.
Yeah, we've been a leader in that grid report for over 8 quarters now. So it's been fun.
And this kind of gets into, what I'm so interested in is this idea of how do you create credibility? And you and I were talking about this before the show, but, Algolia at this point is one of those companies where, again, hot company in the news, people talk extremely favorably about it, in a leader in the quadrant, things like that, or a leader in grid report and things like that. That obviously helps sales, but not all marketers have that. So I guess, how do you look at that type of credibility as, ammo for your arsenal for marketing? And then we'll get into for folks who don't have that.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously credibility is super important in terms of, building trust during a sales cycle, if nothing else. I think, every company has different assets that you leverage. I mean, now that we're at 8,600 customers and some really amazing brands, that's a lot easier thing to do. Earlier in my career, I was CEO of a 10-person startup, and we had none of that. And so instead of trying to point to those things, we pointed to our expertise and that we had a process and we were going to help people be more successful. But we really valued our own time, and that, hey, we'll come on site, but only if you agree to introduce us to these people, and then we're going to do a workshop, and then we're actually going to help you build a better process. So that was actually a big part of the credibility building, was moving from being sales on one side of the table, prospect on the other side, to actually getting on the other side of the table and together drawing their to-be solution. And that was really powerful in terms of kind of creating that trusted partnership, which obviously is another element to that whole idea of being a trusted brand.
Yeah, I mean, I always think about it as like there's always another thing to create for marketing, right? Like we always have, well, it's like first there's like, in early startup days, you have like the first case study, like, hey, this worked. Someone wants to talk about it. Let's write it up. Let's write up the white paper, the case study. And then it's like, okay, well, now we need a mid-market one. And now we need an enterprise one. And now we need, a retail sector. And now we need finance and or FinServ or whatever. And so there's kind of like always this like, well, we need to have, a million different use cases, which show, all the different types of folks as we scale and grow, which adds, credibility. But a lot of times, there's resource constraints and all that stuff, and you can't get to all of those things, but sales is asking, how do you kind of balance those priorities?
Yeah. I mean, so what you're basically talking about there is, proof points through customers, which is, like when I was at Siebel Systems and we were $1 billion, we were very well respected just because everybody knew everyone was using Siebel. And then my example with the startup, where we were building credibility because we could teach the customer something and we were able to show ourselves as a trusted partner. And so I think that's the other element to good marketing is, yeah, you want to have as many case studies as possible, but you also want to help your sales force show up as that trusted partner and show up with insight that the customer doesn't have, and show a sales rep how to actually guide the customer through their buying process in a way where they feel like that trusted partner and not just somebody trying to be a vendor and, close a transaction.
Yeah. Like one of those for Algolia, that organic and web traffic are often 2/3 of marketing source pipeline. That can be tough, but a great site search experience can increase conversion rate of this traffic by 20%. Like that's like one of those classic things where you're doing all this work as a marketer, but you don't realize that Yeah, I don't know. There's oranges on the other side of the tree, right? You just or they're at the top of the tree, I guess you could say, and you just need to buy the ladder. I'm curious, like those type of insights that you've seen from your customers, like what are the marketing leaders that you work with? What are those type of things that they're kind of realizing?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think kind of what you were just alluding to, again, kind of back to why I got excited about coming to Algolia, was that as a CMO, I was working on building so much content for so many different use cases and personas, developer and business, and you've got customers and you've got prospects. And it's impossible to organize all that content, so that it's depending on what the customer wants, they've got everything at their fingertips. Especially as you think about content silos, I think a lot of CMOs just think about the content they're building, and they're not thinking about the content that documentation's building or support, or maybe they've got a professional services arm. And when I was able to, see the Algolia search engine actually say, okay, great, you've got a topic. In the case of Talend, SAP was not a tier 1 topic. It was important, but it wasn't tier 1. And to be able to see all the material pulled together, not just, the marketing material, but also the documentation and, knowledge base articles and all that, you saw how much of a better customer experience you could provide and how much more credible you could be on so many more topics. And that's what every CMO is trying to do, but it can be really hard to figure out, what's the right information architecture if you don't have a good search engine.
Yeah, that's a great point. And things like archive content and all that stuff, like sometimes, well, actually, I'm curious. Do you find that once you have a good search architecture that things where you're like, oh, well, nobody ever went to this piece, we should just archive it, or this, section, it's like, nah, actually, it was just really hard to get to on the site or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, a great example of that is LegalZoom. When they implemented us, they uncovered a whole nother category of customer demand that they weren't thinking about, and it allowed them to introduce a new product line just by being able to watch the search patterns on their site and realize, wow, a lot of people are looking for this, and we don't offer that today.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I just love the idea that there's like these nuggets of wisdom or these things that are happening on your website that some other marketer, years ago spent a lot of time and effort into, and that you haven't really yielded the fruit of that labor yet, and that search can unlock it. I think that's such like a fascinating thing, because I think so many times as marketers, we're just, it's like create, and you have like a content team that's churning stuff out. And especially like for the people who are really doing it well and spending a lot of time and effort making high quality stuff. And then they just kind of wonder, like, this is just never, we keep emailing it to the, list and nobody likes it or whatever it is. I just think it's really fascinating to unlock some of those pieces or some of that hard work.
Yeah, well, as a CMO, I for sure, one of the things that keeps me up at night is that I know I've got great content that is never seeing the light of day. That, maybe it's on YouTube somewhere, or it's on some hidden page on our site, but there's only so many things we can promote. And so this idea of being able to have a search engine that, allows anybody to go find it, it's really exciting.
Any things that surprised you as you took over the role of CMO? You're working with other CMOs and marketing leaders, that are your customers. Any things that kind of like stood out to you that you were kind of blown away by?
Well, I am super passionate about always trying to, get better. And for me, this is kind of my second gig that it's pretty similar. Algolia is French US, Talend was French US, both companies, in the range 50, 60 million when I joined. And so I kind of thought, oh, I'm just going to go do everything I did at Talend all over again. And, it's basically just run the same plays, and I'll not run the plays that didn't work at Talend, and I'll spend more time running the plays that did work at Talend. I'll do them again at Algolia.
Yeah.
Fascinating. It's like everywhere you go, the journey's a little different, and you learn new things, and you work with new people that teach you new things. So I've been having a lot of fun doing that. And, just somehow on the random walk of life here at Algolia, I've realized just how important the partnership is with our SDRs and BDRs and how much potential there is to unlock higher conversion rates by working better with them, making sure they're better educated, that they've got better tools, that they understand, oh, this lead came from here, and here's what you do to follow up next. All those kinds of things. To me, it's unlocked a whole nother area of opportunity that, I didn't focus on as much at Talent, and I'm excited to do here.
That's interesting. So are they part of your team, or is it just partnering with sales?
Yeah, no, it's just partnering with sales. And I'm in general a big believer that those roles should live in sales because you want those people to have a career path into sales. So it's just, more connected that way. But, still making sure that partnership is really strong, so important.
I want to talk customer journey. How do you think the customer journey has changed over the last, decade or so?
Yeah, well, it's funny because it's such a cliche to say 2/3 of the buyer's journey now happens online. But when you look at the data, it's really true. And that was one thing that someone did at Talent. They did a really nice job of kind of documenting the steps people were going through. They interviewed a whole bunch of people. They basically did a autopsy of all of our deals that closed in one quarter, and they showed where the contacts came from and where did we find them? Where did they, what content did they consume? Did they know Talent before the process? How did they hear of us? All those kinds of things. And it was just fascinating to see that journey they go through. And so making sure that you align your content strategy around that journey, by persona, and say, okay, if this person came and they consumed something, top of funnel here, how do we move them to middle of funnel? How do we move them to bottom of funnel and eventually hand off to sales?
It's funny, whenever I go to a website of a product that is selling to marketing, I feel like you always have the best websites because you kind of have the best online journeys. Like Algolia's website, for our listeners, just go to algolia.com. But you have Hotjar up, you have a bot, you're doing some conversational marketing. Like, it's kind of like of course you have to be good because, that's the industry you're in. But it is funny to me because there's always such a good experience, like an online experience, when you do go to those type of things. How much time do you personally look at the website? How much time do you spend on that portion of the customer journey?
Yeah, whatever the answer is, it's not enough because the web is so important. And, for me, I think, one of the things that as I talk to other CMOs, I think maybe I'm more over-rotated on the web, but I think a lot of B2B CMOs, maybe they invest in web, but probably not as much as they should. If you look at typical pipeline, sources, 2/3 of it's coming from the web and from organic traffic. And so being really strong there and making sure you have a big enough team and that you're doing as much as you can there, I think that's super important. I think a lot of CMOs are underinvested there.
Where do you think they're spending their time? Where do you think is kind of like some of the wasted energy?
Yeah, boy, it's tough. I think the role of the CMO has become much more strategic because marketing technology has gotten so much stronger, so much more of the buyer's journey is happening digitally. I think marketing has become more strategic, and as a result, you're asking the CMO to do more things. They have to be even more closely aligned with the product and organization. They have to really figure out the go-to-market and then make sure to align with sales and get everybody lined up on how you go to market. And so it's a big job. And so it's tough for me to say, gee, where would I take time away from? I think we all have there's always the same demands, right? Like sales can be very loud in terms of their needs, and you need to be a good partner with them, but you also need to figure out, where are we really going to invest and where do we say no so we can make sure we're spending enough time on things like the website. And for me personally, one of my bars has been, okay, well, if you want me to build that new competitive asset or you want me to build that new vertical messaging, you as a sales team need to sign up for, you're going to bring me on 5 sales calls or whatever it is. Like, let's see it actually used and let's iterate on it together. Because, you can never build great content in a vacuum. You need to actually put it in front of customers and experience how it gets delivered and all that to learn. And I think it's too easy for sales to say, oh, I need a new case study, I need a new this, a new that. And so making sure you drive kind of commitment from sales to use it and commitment to provide feedback is a great way of filtering down how many requests you actually work on.
That's great advice. Do you feel like, as you're kind of building that online customer journey, being extremely thoughtful of how it goes from the online partially self-serve to, offline talking to sales, like that kind of customer experience? Because it seems like, especially, you I'm sure have a ton of developers, on your site and using the platform. Developers notoriously don't like to talk to salespeople. So I'm curious, like that kind of choose your own adventure, choose how you'd like to buy sort of scenario.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's kind of well known at this time that the whole freemium style model is super important. At Talend, we had in the range of, I think it was 35,000 downloads of our open source products every month. Here, our free trial is a super important piece of our overall, marketing mix. And so to me, I think it's making sure you really understand the self-service journey of those folks. And the better you can make that experience, the more likely they are to one day be ready to talk to sales or just buy on their own and be happy customers.
How do you think about, I don't know if you all are, committed to ABM or how you look at your accounts, but the kind of acquisition of technology tools, it's a little crowded. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of stuff going on. Obviously, you all have a pretty differentiated product, but how do you look at like your advertising campaigns to bring in that demand gen?
Well, I mean, the first thing is we're really working on making sure we're aligned with sales around our go-to-markets and then building integrated campaigns. And so it's about how do you build, campaigns that touch customers 7 times in 7 different ways. So it's really about a mixture of channels and messages that all are aligned around, these kind of core use cases and core value propositions that we're trying to get out there in the marketplace. So I think that kind of alignment across the channels is really important. And then obviously our strategies here really vary depending on whether it's an SMB customer or an enterprise customer. So we're much more likely to do ABM on our strategic target account list than anywhere else.
Do you find that, the kind of lead up to the sale, kind of pre-sales process, investment in that versus post-sale into customer success, into the, later stages of the customer journey? Are you aligned for that sort of thing? Are you aligned to kind of evangelize what your customers are doing? Do you think that's a marketing function? How do you kind of view customer success?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so much opportunity there. And frankly, I think it's an area that, marketing here at Algolia can get better at. We're doing a number of things to help with the onboarding process. But yeah, that first 90 days, obviously super important. So many of so much of your churn will come from people who don't have a great first 90-day experience. And so I think marketing can play a really important role there. And then obviously over time, it's about how do you educate customers about new offerings and the whole, kind of powering cross-sell and upsell as well.
Do you think Algolia can help with podcast search and findability? Because I swear it is so impossible. All these players are so bad at helping you like find and surface new podcasts to listen to. We need you all to step in.
That's so funny. Yeah, absolutely. And you're making me think of a new solution offering we should come out with.
Please, I beg you. I will volunteer as much time as you need to make sure that it happens. Right. I mean, we deal with this. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say one of the fun things we've done for YouTube is allowed people to take YouTube videos and the transcripts that get generated, and then search. So not only are you finding the video, but you're finding the exact spot in the video where they're talking about the topic you want to hear about.
That's slick. No kidding. I didn't know that.
And so we should do that for podcasts too.
Seriously, I promise it'll be worth it. Yeah, it's just really tough. I mean, I think I don't know. I think it's on our roadmap to put Algolia on to marketingtrends.com because, we have over 150 episodes at this point, like, all sorts of different stuff going on there. But the problem is, so like you take something like Marketing Trends where we've had all these CMOs and marketing leaders and folks, but it's, a leader driven show, but you have, different obviously topics within all of those things. So, we've talked about customer success and customer experience and all sorts of different stuff on our show today. But the problem is, okay, well, what if somebody just wants to learn everything about customer success from Marketing Trends, right? Like, how would you, be able to slice that up really quickly and search all of that? And that's really tough. And I think that, I use Marketing Trends as an example, but this is any marketing team where, hey, we did all this amazing content with all these amazing CIOs or whatever it is, but now we want all the retail ones. So can we just jam all the retail stuff into one space without having to like fully recreate the wheel?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a great idea. And frankly, I hadn't thought about it in that regard, but yeah, we absolutely could help with what you're describing for Marketing Trends. And now that I think about it, like, you, as a CMO, we're constantly doing product launches, maybe twice a year, and there'll be multiple topics within those. And you do the webinar and, talk through the different topics and like, how do you surface that? Hey, go watch the winter release and you can see how we did, this new thing that's awesome for mobile or whatever the subtopic is. So that gives me a new idea for how to talk about what Algolia does.
Another example that I was thinking about with the show is we asked this one question in our lightning round, which I'm not going to tell you what it is yet because you still have to go through the lightning round, but we ask a question and it's like, I would love to take, all of the answers that we got from all of our guests of that one question and, and leverage that for a piece of content. Obviously we can go through and do that manually, but the idea of like leveraging search to do that makes it fundamentally easier. And I promise you, Dylan, our amazing head of growth, is not going to sit there and, well, he probably would, but build the search capacity to be able to figure that stuff out. And it's just easier to do something like Algolia and white label it. So
yeah, it's interesting. One of the largest newspaper companies in the world is using us for just that for their own writers, so that they can go search through all the previously written stuff and get right to the topics they need as they're doing research for their next articles.
Yeah, there you go. And then another thing I think is images. I mean, there's something that how many marketers or marketing leaders that, go to their team and like need to find and source, like stock imagery, and stock images are horrible, but they're at least searchable, which is why they're valuable. But you think of all of the stuff that's not searchable, that if you had a database of images or if you have database of images that you currently use, that sort of stuff is just so interesting to me because there's so much value there that's just kind of waiting to be used. So you're not using the same super lame stock image of like, the guy with his head in his hands or, the gal with her hand on her hip and that sort of stuff. Like for a marketing leader, it's like, I would love to have all of the photos from Dreamforce that we took in a place that's, easily searchable so we can drop those into our posts and yet, and not have to sit there and crawl through it.
Yeah, that's a great example. Along those same lines, I think it's going to be really fascinating to see how voice search evolves over time. My classic example is you walk into Home Depot and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm looking for this thing. And what aisle could it possibly be on? And how powerful would that be if you could go to your phone and say, what aisle is the XYZ on? And have it take you right there versus wandering up and down the aisles for a while.
Well, I always joke with my girlfriend, I'm great at shopping when I don't have a list I'm not great. I'm average at shopping when I don't have a list because I could just walk up and down the aisles and throw random stuff in the cart. I'm horrible when I have a list because I have no idea where anything is at the store, no matter how many times I go. But that's the exact thing, right? It's like if I go to Home Depot, that means I'm going to walk down every single aisle.
Yeah.
Like for a fact, you know?
I feel for you.
Okay. So I want to talk campaigns. And it doesn't have to be at Algolia, but what are some of your favorite, or just we can choose one campaign that you did that you were super proud of or especially love to do?
Yeah. Well, I think that varies depending on who you're selling to and all that. One of the ones that we did at Talon that was really successful was, everybody wanted to work with big data and wanted to work with machine learning. And so we built this integrated solution. It was basically a virtual machine where it had everything in it pre-built, including a cookbook. And that was extremely popular because, it was teaching people. And I think, the more value you can provide with your marketing content, the more likely your campaigns are to both perform and create value for the customer. And so, I think that's a really important mindset to have when running campaigns.
Any lessons there on how to make that valuable?
Well, I mean, it's about having the right resources to build the content in the first place. And so, I think that's an area that you want to make sure as a marketing leader that, either how do I get that expertise in my team, or how do I make sure I get enough time out of the people who have that expertise if they're in other functions. And, the people that are the ones that can deliver the most value are also probably the ones that are most valuable internally inside your organization. So figuring out how you balance, building great products and teaching your customers or whatever is, one of those great arts.
That's a great point. We were working with a company, and I believe it was their chief strategy officer was brilliant. Like she knew every single thing you could possibly ever know about that was out there in the market, but extremely busy, right? And the marketing team kind of never had access to her because she's so busy. And we were working on making a podcast. And and just like getting the time to sit down with her a bunch of different sessions to create this podcast. We got all this stuff, and marketing is like, man, this is super helpful because we can leverage all this stuff to write content, but it's stuff that like our writers couldn't have sat there and, jammed away on. Our content team couldn't have created this stuff because it's too technical or whatever it is. But that's a great point that you kind of have to lobby internally and figure out how to carve your CTO away from the other stuff at hand to get some insights, to lock them in a room and interview them or whatever it is.
Yeah, well, the other piece of that was just teaching them how to create or communicate the kind of content that people wanted, right? Because they had so much knowledge, but they weren't marketers. And so you'd sit them down, you'd interview them, you're like, okay, that was okay. But let me show you what good looks like. Because every once in a while, we would have a grand slam. And so teaching, our best, experts inside the company who are technical, how to create grand slams, that was a big win for us as well.
What about a campaign in your career that didn't go as well or didn't go as planned?
Well, I don't have a specific one off the top of my head, but, the thing I would say that I'm fascinated by is how do you break down the barriers between product marketing and your demand gen teams? That product marketing, by nature, they want to lead product first. And so like, okay, great. Let me tell you all the great things about the product. And demand gen, they've learned because they've been marketing to customers that, customers want to talk about their problems and, their goals. And then if you can lead them to a solution, that's great. But you need to start with the things they care about. Product marketing will often say, okay, great, I want to build 15 new assets. And demand gen's like, yeah, I don't have capacity to market 15 new assets. And so like that, how do you get these folks, to align and work well and actually have the impact that they could have, is is a hard thing. One of the places where I saw that done best was at Citrix, where the guy who had been VP of product marketing became the VP of demand gen. And he did a really nice job of saying, okay, we're going to do two in a box. We're going to take a product marketer and a demand gen person. We're going to give them a campaign and we're going to have them work on it together. And he helped kind of lead them through the frameworks to get them thinking about it the same way. And you really need somebody who has that expertise to reach across the aisle from the product marketing function to the demand gen, or from demand gen to product marketing, to help people kind of connect the dots to make those successful.
Final campaign question. What campaign have you seen out in the wild that's not yours that was something you were jealous of?
Well, it's hard not to get jealous of the Apple folks. I mean, they're obviously such an iconic thing. Everybody talks about them. But the thing that's impressed me is that, I think their lead has shrunk in many areas and their marketing has actually gotten better. And so they just do such a good job. You go to their site and, you look at what they're doing and it's just so compelling. You're like, I want that. One of the lessons learned I take from that is also that, as you kind of look at user testing data and all that, like nobody wants to read. And so building great visuals that tell 95% of your story with a little bit of words around it. Like, I think so often people start with, okay, what am I going to write? And what are the bullets? And then, okay, let me put a picture up of somebody high-fiving somebody or something, right? It's like, no, start with what's the picture I'm going to put up, to tell the story I want to tell. And then what are the fewest number of words I can put next to that picture?
My dad, when I was a kid, would always say a picture's worth 1,000 words, just like probably everybody, has heard a million times. And because he would take a lot of photos and I was, a pithy youth. And I was like, no, it's not. And so one morning I came down to eat my cereal and he had taken a photo of like our backyard or so, like some terrible photo, and on the back of it had written 1,000 words in pen, just on the back of the photo. And he's like, I guess you're wrong. And I was just like, man, it's a great marketing lesson in hindsight to say, like, find the photo and you can write about it, but trying to write about something without it is a little harder.
One of the campaigns that I loved was those UPS ones where, the guy was doing the whiteboarding. And, you don't need really complex images. And obviously his weren't, right? He was drawing with a black marker on a whiteboard and writing a few words and circling them and drawing arrows. But that way of visually conveying things in a simple format like that is just so powerful.
Why is drawing on whiteboards so satisfying? It's like one of those things when you watch someone who's really good at, especially who's a talented artist, and they're drawing on a whiteboard, and you're like, this is extremely satisfying. Those were great ads. Why did they stop running those? That's a good point.
I don't know. I've done a lot of whiteboard selling training. 90% of the people are like, oh, do I really have to draw? But once you actually get them past that kind of fear of it, and they realize that a crappy drawing can still be really compelling, people really embrace it, and it's super effective.
Back to the Apple ads, I love those shot on iPhone ads. I thought those were so compelling, because they're beautiful. So like you look at the photos and it's so cool looking. And it's just such a simple thing of like, they know the value proposition that changed is like, you have the most powerful camera on the market is in your phone now. So it's just one feature of the phone, it's one way to differentiate. And we're just going to push really hard on that one thing.
I think that is something that Apple really, leads at, is that pick one thing and really nail it. And I think so many marketers, they want to tell you 15 things. And in the process of doing 15, maybe they should have just stuck with, for a while it was Face ID, right? For Apple. And it didn't seem that compelling, but somehow at the end of the ad, you were really convinced. And so as a marketer, you probably would have been tempted to go, no, we have to talk about the screen and the camera and the facial recognition and on, right? And it's like, no, they picked one thing and nailed it.
Pixel had ads that were basically like the best camera on the market or something like that. I don't remember what they were. For this is a great example because I don't remember what they were, but I remember that they were like, they had a better camera than iPhone. But you look at like, but I've seen all the photos that the iPhone can take on all of these like billboard ads and all these other ads. So even if it's better than that, I know that the iPhone camera is ridiculously good. And I remember my buddy who had a Pixel was like, "Oh, my camera's better than yours." And I'm like, "Well, it's pretty good." But it's like the classic thing. Like I remember shot on iPhone, but I don't remember whatever that other campaign was.
It's also just fascinating how that reinforces how important visuals are, right? Like the camera is such an important feature on the phone.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the most important one now, right? I mean, it's like, there's not even like every phone has apps now. Every phone, is about the same size, more or less. So you have to figure that out, ways to differentiate.
Yeah, it's been really impressive how much of a leap forward Apple made with the iPhone 11.
Let's get into our lightning round. Marketing Trends is brought to you by Salesforce. Salesforce brings marketing and engagement together. You can learn more at salesforce.com/marketing. We love Salesforce. They've been the host of this show since the very beginning, over 150 plus episodes ago. Check out salesforce.com/marketing. Lightning round questions. Ashley, are you ready?
Ready.
Number 1, what app on your phone, speaking of phones, what app on your phone is the most fun?
Oh, the most fun. Well, back to the camera. I take a lot of pictures of my kids. So I think I have a lot of fun with that.
Do you have a hidden talent or passion?
Well, I'm 6'6", so I really miss my basketball days. I'm 50 now and I've torn both ACLs, but I loved playing basketball.
Favorite team?
Of course, the Warriors.
Our poor Warriors, our poor Steph and his poor hand. It's just tragic. Next year, come back. Do you have a favorite TV show or podcast that you're watching or listening to right now?
Well, I just finished watching The Expanse. It's on Amazon Prime. And I thought they did a really nice job with that show and the story and how it evolved over time.
Favorite book that you've read recently or one of your faves?
Well, it's not for the faint of heart, but I just listened to, I'm dyslexic, so I listen to more audiobooks than I read. And it was called How Not to Die. It's basically all about why you should go vegan. And after the first chapter, I was convinced. And he spent many other chapters reinforcing it and then telling me how you can basically change your diet and live a healthier life.
What is your best advice for a first-time CMO?
I'm on the board of a company and I give a lot of marketing advice. I think getting really clear on your core messages and doing it in a super simple way, because most prospects just aren't that sophisticated. So you need to have super simple messages that they're actually going to remember longer than 5 or 10 minutes. And your sales team isn't going to be able to remember them if they're more complicated than that anyway. So getting to that kind of level of simplicity is a multiplier across everything else you do.
Confusion equals no sale. I love it. Favorite animal?
Dogs and cats are pretty popular in my household, so I'll go with them.
What question do you never get asked that you wish you were asked more often?
I love to talk about the whole kind of sales and marketing alignment and how do you grow a business and how do you create all the elements of a strategy to go do that. So it's not that I never get asked about it because, obviously both as a board member and as a CMO, we spend a lot of time talking about it, but it's a topic I enjoy.
We'll have to do more of that next time when you come back. We'll have to do we didn't even get into startup stories and I'm sure you have a ton.
The 30-second thing on that is focus, do fewer things and do them better. And I think far too many companies try to do too many things at once and then you just can't actually execute it throughout your whole company and get everybody aligned on it.
Yeah, it goes back to your the simplicity of the message, right? If it's confusing inside the company, it's going to be confusing outside the company.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all we got. Our listeners should check out Algolia. Actually, any final thoughts? Anything to plug?
Well, if you're a B2B marketer in high tech, like I am, definitely encourage you to check out Algolia's search engine for your site as well, and just how it can really help you break down content silos and get more out of your marketing content.
Awesome. Thanks for hanging out, and we got to talk soon.
Awesome. Thank you.
Marketing Trends Podcast is brought to you by Salesforce. Discover marketing built on the world's #1 CRM, Salesforce. Put your customer at the center of every interaction. Automate engagement with each customer and build your marketing strategy around the entire customer journey. Salesforce. We bring marketing and engagement together. Learn more at salesforce.com/marketing.